G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here. What you're looking at there is my northeast boundary fence marker. The survey peg went in there probably 25 years ago. And the theory is, I'm just going to go for a walk, standing on my neighbour's ground, looking back towards my place. And I thought it might be a good day to have a bit of chat. Gillard and Tony Abbott. Who's a misogynist? Why, it's a bit of a mare's nest when you get Tony Abbott telling Julia Gillard that she's a wicked evil thing because she refused to vote to remove a fella called Peter Slipper, who used to be the Speaker in the Australian Parliament, you know, the House of Representatives, the House of Government. Now the thing is, Julia Gillard is the Labor Prime Minister in a minority government propped up by the Greens and a bunch of independents. One of those independents is Tony Windsor, who's my federal representative. And the Speaker had to come out of the Labor Party or the Independents. None of the Independents wanted the job. There was a Labor Speaker and it was a completely hung Parliament. Julia Gillard, for reasons of her own, decided to say to Peter Slipper, who was elected as a Liberal Party member, he was having trouble with his membership in the sense that he wasn't getting pre-selected or something like that. And she said to him, how's about, there's the power line access gate, she said, how's about you become an independent and become Speaker? Peter Slipper said, oh, you mean that I can wear all those ermine robes and I can force people to let me wear a wig in the Parliament? And Julia Gillard said, yeah, mate, you can do it. You can be the Speaker, and that way I can get the old Speaker to come back to the Labor Party and I'll have one more vote against the Liberal National Coalition. And in Australia, the Liberal Party means right-wing neoconservative bosses and shareholders party, and the National Party, that means miners and loggers and farmers and graziers. The Labor Party was found and formed by the unions with the basic idea of fighting the bosses and propounding the White Australia policy, because it was founded before the First World War. So, in order to get one more vote on the floor of the House of Reps, our dear first ever woman Prime Minister put Peter Slipper into the chair. Problem is that that meant that according to the Liberal Party, Peter Slipper was a wicked evil person. Wait a second, I've got to get over this fence. Okay, so around about that stage in the proceedings, there was a personal secretary to Peter Slipper who came out and said that his boss, who's married with kids and a preacher in his fairly conservative church, I think it might be an Anglican church, but I could be wrong. This Peter Slipper, the family man and religious preacher, he's been making unwanted sexual advances to his male personal secretary, which is kind of a reversal and an abrogation of his whole lifestyle and theory and his whole cover story as to who he is. So the fella who reckons that the boss put the hard word on him, his name's Ashley, Peter Ashley, Stephen Ashley, something like that. Ashley's his name. He sued not only his ex-boss, Peter Slipper, but also the Commonwealth of Australia for failing to provide a safe workplace. This caused the Labor Party's jewel in the crown, the independent Speaker, Peter Slipper, with his pomp and his love of ceremony and his wigs and his gowns. This caused him to have to step down as Speaker in the House to defend himself. In court, against his personal secretary who says he made unwanted sexual advances to a man at work. So the Liberal Party didn't like doing it, but they had to sort of say, well, we told you so, why do you think we wasn't going to pre-select him to stand again? He had horrible personal habits. And apparently the Liberal Party knew about it, but right up until the day that Peter Slipper became the Speaker under a Labor administration, he was considered to be a real good bloke by Tony Abbott, the leader of the Liberal opposition. So when he stepped down, it was a bit of an own goal for both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party. But there it was. Now, within the last fortnight, the Australian Commonwealth Government has paid out $50,000 in an out-of-court settlement. No admissions, just here's $50,000. You go away and stop suing us for not providing you with a safe workplace where the boss makes unwanted advances. The same day, pretty much, that the Commonwealth paid out, would you believe Australia's Attorney General, Nicola Roxon, famous as a toucan screamer who can't hold a single glass of wine, she says that Ashley's case is vexatious, but they paid out on it anyway. He then offered to sue the Commonwealth. Peter Slipper first fired his legal team, then failed to turn up in court, went through 9 hours of court-ordered mediation, and Ashley and Slipper went in to do battle. Slipper representing himself, half the time in tears. Now, tough little hill this. Yesterday, possibly the day before on the weekend, it transpired in court that Mr. Ashley had kept 200 pages of text messages sent to him by his boss, the ceremonial Speaker of the House, the man in the horsehair wig and the ermine robes. Now, admittedly, they were sent before he was made Speaker. They were sent when he was a fully paid up, true believing member of the Liberal Party, one of Tony Abbott's troopers. And Tony Abbott himself is fairly famous as a misogynist, as is Tony Abbott's long-time best friend, Alan Jones, the radio announcer. Alan Jones, the football coach, who was thrown out of England, effectively, socially, because it was noticed that he tended to have romantic physical affairs with young footballers who had not long turned 18 and become eligible for seduction. He's a famous misogynist, is this Alan Jones. He's become recently more famous when he was invited to address the Liberal Party, actually the young Liberal Party, at Sydney University, and less than a fortnight after our Prime Minister's father was buried at the age of 84, this Alan Jones twerp decides to crack funny with the story that the Prime Minister's father, obviously, in inverted commas, obviously died of shame because of all the political lies that his daughter had been telling. That's Alan Jones. He's since had to return the Mercedes car that his advertisers used to provide. All advertising has been pulled off his radio station, particularly because of his misogynistic, vile, distasteful remarks concerning a grieving family. So, yesterday, there was a vote in the House of Parliament because on the weekend, as I started to say before I lost my puff, this Mr. Ashley put up 200 pages of text messages, introduced them into court. It's a matter of public record. 200 pages of text messages of his boss, the Closet-Homosexual, Peter Slipper, saying horrible things about female genitalia and passing comment on the appearance and the conjectured likely appearance of female members of Parliament. And so, Tony Abbott, the Liberal leader of the opposition, called for a vote to force Peter Slipper to step down. And Julia Gillard, fighting the party line, also fighting the point of law that Parliament is not a kangaroo court, the matter is in fact before the court. Nobody is contesting that the text messages are in fact genuine, so why not leave it to the court? So the Labor Party and the Independents voted not to force Peter Slipper to step down. Therefore, thus and because, Tony Abbott took to his little pins and waffled on about what an evil person Julia Gillard was. How dare she call him a misogynist, because there's been a Labor Party campaign to say that Tony Abbott doesn't understand women. He's an easy target for that because he's a hardline Catholic. He's the sort of man who, when he was Minister for Health, he claimed it was nothing to do with his Catholic beliefs that caused him to outlaw the RU486 morning after abortion pill. He was worried that the pill hadn't been proven well enough overseas. So to save all those Australian women from the mortal sin of abortion, from a pill that he didn't think was quite safe enough, Tony Abbott wouldn't let him have it. He's a fairly classic Catholic school football bully, and he does not get women unless they're quite submissive. So Julia Gillard stood up and she explained for 15 minutes why she was not prepared to be lectured or bullied on the topic of misogyny and supporting misogynists by Tony Abbott, the man who stated that, in his opinion, women should not be allowed to take abortion as an easy option. So, when you hear that the Australian Prime Minister has gone viral worldwide talking about how she doesn't want to be lectured on misogyny, that's just a little bit of the background to a very complicated story that boils down to the fact that the Liberal Party and the Labor Party and the National Party in Australia would rather worry about personality issues, which boil down to the fact that they're all equally as bad as the other. It's a game of pots and kettles. The Liberal Party wants to make money out of exploiting the planet. They want to turn that into that. The National Party wants to do the same, and the Labor Party, well, they want to be paid to do it with a union rep to make sure they get their working conditions and their holiday pay. I would strongly suggest to anybody who's in a position to vote in Australia that they vote against the Liberal National Party, vote against the Labor Party, and vote for the Greens. I would like to support the independents, but I got to say they are pushing a sort of a communal agenda, a mixture of the Liberal Party and the Labor Party and the National Party, which is basically, if it moves, shoot it. If it doesn't move, cut it down. If you can't chop it down, dig it up. If it's too big to dig it up, try dynamite. And if that won't work, shit man, you can always rent the bastard out for advertising space. In that sense, the only choice for a rational human being who understands biology, chemistry, you haven't got to understand a lot, just a little bit, a smidgen. The only rational choice is to vote Green, because the Greenies are at least seriously interested in trying to preserve the biosphere. And let's face it, unless we have an environmental surplus, we cannot conduct any economic activity. Why do you think I've been paying rates on an endangered species sanctuary for 22 years? Because when I bought the failed farm, it would have cost more money to farm it than it would make. No economic activity was possible. Therefore, I paid to be made responsible for everything alive on that 100 acres. I couldn't see any way to sustainably exploit any of it. Therefore, I've been giving the land a rest, sequestering carbon dioxide at the rate of 100 tonnes per year, giving me a carbon negative lifestyle. Even after I pay the rates out of the pension and then clean up the atmospheric carbon emitted by the taxpayer who makes my pension possible. There we go, slightly over the time. I'll see if it uploads anyway. This is my western boundary. We have just walked the north boundary. Ciao.